for all you folks out there that are like, we need more digital leads, we need better hooks. What about a free month? What about a half this? What if I give this? What if I give that? I'm not saying those things aren't relevant, but that's not the most relevant thing, right? If you make people feel seen and appreciated and you understand them, that starts from the very first interaction until 10 years in your business, right? That's when you keep people. Matt, got you in the Beats Lab again. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Thanks for carving out some time. I know you're busy.
A little bit.
This is going to be probably a 4-part series.
Yeah.
That we're going to do. This is basically going to come out after conference, and this is essentially a little bit longer discussion, but this is what I'm going to be presenting at conference.
Oh, cool.
So this gives me a chance to sort of sort out my thoughts as you and I talk through it before conference, and then it won't be a spoiler alert for those that are there, but it will always, it'll be around as sort of a framework for what we're thinking moving forward in the future for Alloy.
Cool. Like it, man.
Better known as Alloy.
Alloy, matey.
You got a dad joke?
I do. This is a solid one. Can I tell you a dirty joke?
Sure.
A man fell in the mud.
Oh boy, that's
good. Pretty terrible.
Good for the kids. That one's pretty bad. I have one way better than that.
Yeah, right.
What do you call a dog that does magic?
I don't know.
A labracadabrador.
That's like what my kids would say.
I know. That's all I'm reduced to that. I'm like, they get either way too saucy and would get us for sure canceled, or straight up kids jokes. But that's a good one. You know,
We'll take it. We'll take it.
It's been weak. Hey, can I start out by reading what I'm going to wrap up conference with?
Sure.
Because it's sort of the idea of what we're doing here. So you ready for this?
Yep.
This is going to relate essentially to how do we differentiate ourselves moving forward? You know, we have candidates that come in, and the question is asked in different ways. What's the moat around the business? How are you going to protect Alloy? It seems really simple. Obviously, we know we work hard to make it that way, but it would be easy for someone to imagine that someone could come in and disrupt us, right? Because it's like, what are you going to do to protect it? It's like, well, first of all, it is more nuanced than it looks, so it's a little bit harder. But also, you guys, what I don't think people realize is how many systems we have in place for essentially care would be the word. And so the title of my talk is Care is Currency, and how we can quite literally, as much as it sounds like a kumbaya campfire conversation, quite literally out care other brands, other people, other competitors. I really think in a model that has 130 to 150 people, looking at Dunbar's number, all the science that goes into the psychology, we can literally out care people. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's how we've been built since day one, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting back to our roots. It's so easy to think of all the widgets and all the little things we do, and we'll read some stats about that. But essentially, this is the idea. The future of Alloy will not be built on luck. It will not be built on quick wins or chasing shiny objects. It will be built on 1,000 small acts of care every day, in every location, from every owner and every team member. This is not our first rodeo. We've been here before. We've seen what works, and businesses that win care more. So my challenge to you is simple. This week, prove it. Care so much it's obnoxious. Care so much it's contagious. Care so much you can't help but do the boring work every day. That's how you build something that lasts. That's how you change lives. That's how we win.
Yeah, I love it, man.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Deep.
Yeah.
Pretty deep. Coming deep. But it's true. I believe every word of it. Obviously, I wrote it. But like that's what we do, man. That's how we win. And so we're going to talk about how we do that and what's already in place for our franchisees to be able to win. And I'm going to start out with just something that we do that's unique to boutique fitness, which is an induction session for someone. We call it the starting point session. And I'm just going to give examples, not of what it is, because there is already a podcast made on that, but more so what it can mean to someone. And if you really care, what can manifest itself out of those starting point sessions.
Yeah, I love
which you've probably done thousands.
A lot, yeah. Maybe
agree?
more.
20,000 starting points. The first story that comes to mind that you and I have talked about before was a guy named Jerry. And Jerry was a teacher at my kids' Catholic middle. He went 1 through 8,
Yep.
grades 1 through 8. And he was the favorite teacher there. Super jolly guy, smart. All the kids loved him, very involved at the school, very involved in the community. but extremely overweight, right? And he knew it. He knew me. He knew the guy who was our director at the time named Joe. And, Joe's kids ended up going to school there as well. And so finally, after, I don't know, we've been in business forever at this point, but Jerry comes in and does what we call the starting point session, which is that first time somebody comes in. And we sit down, we do goal and needs analysis, we measure how people move, we get all these cool metrics. We take them through a sample workout to either make them feel safe or make them feel, know that we can work them hard enough, whatever their goals are and their level of fitness, right? And then we sit down and say, hey, based on your goals and what you want, this is what we recommend. That's it. It's a process to align yourself as an expert to then convince somebody you have the problem or the solution to their problem. So imagine this guy, Jerry. He's been out of shape his whole life. He's in bad health at this point. He comes in. He tells Joe during the starting point that he's actually been thinking about coming in here for almost 10 years, right? So he's known about us for that long.
Right.
Comes in, goes through the whole starting point session, and then Joe simply says at the end, Jerry, this is what you need to do to be successful. And there's a slight pause, and then Jerry says, let me think about it. And in a knee-jerk to that response, Joe, to our Catholic school teacher, which as Joe's telling me the story right after the session, he's apologizing for what the language that he used. But he looks Jerry dead in the eye, and he said, Jerry, are you fucking kidding me? Which is a terrible thing to say to your kid's Catholic school teacher, no less. But the point is, and the reason that the swear word makes it more impactful was he did that because he cared enough about the person in front of him to not let him off the hook. Here's someone who they need accountability more than the 99% of people out there.
Right.
He just told you he's been thinking about coming in for 10 years. You talked about all the pain points. You got it all dialed in to still get to the end and say, let me think about it. And what Joe was basically saying is, Jerry, there's nothing to think about. You're here now. Like, let's go, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've already thought about this. And, again, Jerry just looked at him like he was crazy. And I think it took, even though it came out of Joe's mouth, I think it took him aback a bit that he said it, right? But he stood on business and just sat there and looked at him until Jerry's like, you know what, you're right, man. So he basically, someone cared enough to not let him off the hook to get him to sign up. And as history goes, he went on to lose a bunch of weight, got off a bunch of meds, best shape of his life, and says it was the most impactful conversation he had ever had. I don't know where he is now. I haven't seen him around and out and about, but at that time in his life, that's what he needed and that's what he got. But the reason that you have to care enough to do that is you've sat in this seat. I've sat in that seat. A lot of people listening to this have sat in the seat or thinking about it. It's really easy when someone says, let me think about it, to the discomfort of, not wanting to be rejected is to say, okay, yeah, well, that's cool. I'll just circle back with you next week or whatever, and we'll let you know. We all know deep down that's not what that guy needs. He needs what happened, right? He needs somebody care enough about him to not let him off the hook, right? Because if that worked, if he could motivate himself, he would have done it already, right? So, again, that's what I mean by care. There's a structure already there. Or there's already a starting point. You've always said, man, I can't teach people to give a crap. I can't teach them how to care. Like, you just have to care. The mechanisms are in place, but think about a starting point session done by someone like you or Joe, who at the end looks at that person and says, no, I'm not letting you off the hook because I care about you as a person, right? Not because I want to make a sale. Is it one and the same? Sure. Forget about it. If you're adverse to money, and you don't care about that at all, and you're only altruistically motivated, so what? This is still the right thing to do. This would be like sitting down with a relative of yours who's like in dire straits. They really need your help. What are you going to say? You're going to pull punches? You're going to be like, oh, that's okay. Well, you can just call me later. You're going to be like, if it's your brother or your cousin or your parent or your kid, you're going to be like, no, this is what you need to do. And you're going to hold them accountable. But you got to care enough to be able to do that. Do you agree?
No, I mean, that's definitely it. Like, we have the mechanisms to run it. You can't go through the motions. Like, I like to pull back a little bit. Like, if you look at our business overall, we do personal training in small groups. We target typically like 40 plus demographic. The people that we go after clearly need help, like I say, 90% of them, because they haven't ever had somebody that like truly cared, life got away, whatever happened. And that all starts, like you've mentioned it many times, just even getting this point, like the starting point session is, do you care enough to just continually reach out and try to help somebody? And I can't tell you how many times I've just got people in for starting point sessions that already told me they can't afford it, I can't do it, I have injuries, this, that, or the other. But I always tell them, hey, look, regardless whatever happens right here, you're going to come in for starting point session, and I'm going to help you in some way. Whether it works out with us or not, I care enough that I'm going to give you something that's going to make you better.
Yep.
Right. And that's always the frame of mind like I'm going in with. And that's what we teach. Like, I'm going to help you. And then that care comes all the way through starting point session. And guess what? The majority of the times that people feel that in the SBS, and that's why they stay with you, because they got that nowhere else in their lives.
Yeah. I mean, nobody takes that much interest in it, especially as a consumer of a business. Most businesses, they don't even look up from the desk when you walk in, right? They barely even acknowledge and say hello, much less do that. I mean, that, I have 3 stories, if you will, around that. But the third story is the one you touched on. So I'll just go out of order, which is when people would come to see you, you would literally tell them what you said, just come in, regardless of whether or not I can work with you long term or if this is a good fit. You're going to get something very positive out of this session. But you said it because you meant it.
Yeah.
So I can think of a million, just, say a million, but a lot of times that people have come in and they quite literally came in and could not afford it. Like perhaps they were between jobs or whatever. And a lot of times I can't afford it. It's an excuse for, I don't think is a good value here, but there are some legitimate times when that's a real excuse. And what you would then say to them is like, okay, that's fine. But you'd already told them if you come in today, you're going to get something out of it. Not because it's a brand promise that you're forced to keep. It's just because you're wired that way. So I can remember a lot of times, Matt, that you would give people things to do on their own at home. Like, hey, listen, I know you can't afford it now, but based on what I saw, you really need to get moving. Like, this is critical for you at this point. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to get your steps in. You said you like to walk, so let's make a habit out of that 3 times a week. And then you need to start adding some kind of strength training in, right? So 2 days a week. What do you have at home? Dumbbells. Great. Tell you what, I'm going to email you a simple workout, right, for you to do on your own at home. I need you to do that. Reach out if you ever need any help, right? Let me know how you're doing. I'd love to hear from you, just to make sure you're okay. People were absolutely blown away by that. And guess what? That person, as you know, Matt, they know people they work with that do have the discretionary income. Right. They may have a cousin or their parents can come in, or there's how many of those people have referred people, or their economic situation changes and then they come in. But they are absolute raving fans of our business because when you sat in that seat of the starting point, you were going to help them no matter what. And if it made sense for them and they could actually afford it, they were going to sign up, and they would have, but they legitimately couldn't. But you helped them anyway. Because you had so much passion to help people, you would help them anyway. And I don't know that there's any brand that does that. And I'm not saying that that's our main playbook, because we're not, we certainly aren't bashful about making money, and we think we have a great value proposition. Every now and then you're going to run into those people. Point is, do you care enough to do that for someone? Because if you do, it means that you're sitting in that seat, even if they did have the money and you were signing up 100% of people, it's because you cared that much, right? That's why.
Well, we always, again, our business is simple. Our sales are simple. I mean, we have a scripted sales process, which is just to enhance, to show somebody that you care and to get all the information you need. There's no tricks at the end of this. Like, like a lot of sales tactics, writing stuff down, all that. Like, it's never like that, because it's a straight relationship. They care. They know they're going to get what I'm telling them. And that's key. I mean, like, take Jerry again. I guarantee you that there was at least 10 conversations with Jerry before you got him inside the building, right? To you or Joe or anybody else. But again, you cared, and you kept fighting for him to get him in.
Yep.
Right? That's the key. That's it.
But that's how we're wired, our whole organization, at the top, from me to Joe to you, Matt, to everyone else. That's what we're trying to do. That's how much we care. So our job is to then impart that knowledge and that culture down to franchisees, to the ownership group, who it gets to their people, who then it gets to the customer, right? That's what we're trying to do. And that's why I'm explaining this in story form at conference, and that's why I want everyone to hear it now. It's like that is what our brand is, and we have a system and mechanisms around care. None of them work if the impetus for doing them isn't that you really care about people.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
what I'm getting to. And then the last story I have is directly about you, Matt, which I always find it funny because you ended up being like the best director we ever had. But leading up to that, when you first stepped into that role, I remember we role played and went over like, okay, here's how you do it, right? You go through the starting point, and then it's a pretty big price tag for a young man, which you were, at the time, to say, hey, Susie, our most successful clients do this, and you circle the $459, which at the time was our 3 times a week rate, right? And you slide it over to her so she can see it, and then you just sit there. And everybody knows it's very uncomfortable. We all know, like, if you practice this, if you pause for 5 seconds, it feels like an eternity. But imagine what that person's just been through, right? You took them through, you made them cry maybe because you asked enough why questions to peel the onion about the real reason they're there. That can be emotional, right? Then you showed them this thing where you measured how they move, and they're like, am I doing okay? And then you measure what's going on inside their body, and they weren't stoked to find out they had a ton of visceral fat, right? And then you took them through a sample workout, which they were able to do, but it felt a little bit awkward. Like, I'm not really sure. And then you sit down, right? And you say, our most successful clients do this, and you wait. You have to wait. There's a lot of time for that person to process everything they've just been through emotionally. In addition to your suggestion, just shut up. There's an old adage in sales that says whoever's talking is losing, and it's true. Make your point, make your value proposition, be quiet. So we role played that, and then when you came out of the office, everybody was all happy, and they signed up for their $459 and they left. And then you're like, oh my God, you can't. I'm like, what? You're like, almost passed out. I'm like, what do you mean? You go, well, I got through the whole thing, and I said, like, our most successful clients do this, and then I just sat there, and you're like, dude, it's like my whole world was like, when you're getting ready to pass out and things start getting black, and you get a little bitty small circle in front of you. He's like, you were like, I was going out. I thought I was going to pass out, and it was probably 5 seconds tops, right? And the person goes, okay. And then all of a sudden, pew, the lights are back on, and you're like, oh, yeah, old school. What happened to me? I was out. I didn't remember it. But I always laugh about that story. But again, you had to care enough to go through that discomfort. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of people, when you're moving into a role, say that you're a new director in an alloy, and now you might be required to take some phone call sales. Well, that may be something you've never done, so you're uncomfortable. So you don't like it. Well, no one likes to be uncomfortable. But if you care enough to learn the skill, that is the first line of sales, to get someone interested, to get them into the club so that you can convince them you have a solution to their problem. So, okay, it's hard. So what? Like, you're going to avoid all hard things forever? If you care enough, you'd be willing to learn that skill, right? So, and also just the conviction to do it. Maybe you didn't have it then, but you borrowed it from me because I'd already been doing it for 10 years, right? So, like, if you're listening to this as an alloy owner, an owner of any business, like, you put somebody in that seat, maybe they're scared of sales. It's like, well, let them borrow your conviction and your care and all the things I'm talking about today, right? We want our franchisees, our franchise owners, partners, they should borrow it from us, and then your team should borrow it from you, and then the client should be just as bought in as well, right? But sometimes you're going to do things that are uncomfortable, that are scary. And I'm sure everybody, when they hear that, is going to be laughing, thinking about you actually being scared to sit down.
Hey, man, you never forget your first.
100%. Plus, what is this, 15 years ago? It's like you were a young man, 20s, early 20s or mid 20s. It's like.
Still young.
Well, young-ish, maybe. So starting point session, it's a massive opportunity to care about people, but you have to do it. Like the whole why has to be so compelling. You have to care so much that you're willing to not let people off the hook, even though it's uncomfortable, right? To give people something to do, even if you can't help them because you're in that seat to change lives. Even so, what, they can't pay you right now? Well, they might have 10 people that are in their circle that they'll refer. Just help people. I'm not asking you to spend a bunch of time helping people that can't afford it, but you get what I'm saying, right? And then maybe you are going to have to step into some role or some functions that are really uncomfortable. But if your main driver is to help people, that's how you do it, right? And so anyway, just using a starting point session as an example of how we can care more than any other brand. There's a mechanism there to do it, right? The only other thing I want to touch on today, because we'll break it down into segments, is doing the boring work. And we talked just a minute about doing phone calls, right? We mentioned that just now. That seems to be something that's just not very pleasant for most people because they haven't done it. But let me give you a couple of examples there of people that just made the calls. They just did the work, right? One would be the director. His name was Paul. He worked for Casey for a while. He ended up moving to his hometown where we don't have an alloy after a few years. But Casey would constantly tell him, you got to call the leads. You got to call them again. You got to call them again. He already called them, and it's like, I think it's human nature to call people a couple of times and just assume that they're not interested, right? Sure. And then they're like, we always joke about this, and I'm air quoting, those are old leads or they're bad leads, like they've gone stagnant. Well, they're not. Think about someone's life. We can put the right ad or the right hook or whatever in front of the right people, but we don't know when. And so like, just because they called in that minute, to your point, speed to lead, we missed it. Maybe we can call till the next day. Now they're in a different mood, or maybe they got some scary news about one of their parents being sick, or their job's shaky, or who knows, right? So you got to get them while they're hot, but you just don't know when. So they may reach out, be hot, and then have some life events happen. And that's exactly what happened here. So Paul was sharing with Casey, thanks for staying on me about being convicted to make all these calls, because this customer wrote a testimonial saying, if you had not called me 7 times, I would have never come in here. And right after I reached out to you guys, that was it. I had a parent that got ill. I got some crazy work things that came up that put me on the road. And I just kept forgetting to do it because I was just busy, and you did not let me off the hook. You kept calling and calling. And then finally he reached this person at a time when they could talk, and they're like, you know what? I appreciate the effort. They came in, heaven forbid, got in the best shape of their life. That studio also got a new client, which means more money in their pocket. This is like the veritable win-win, right? And this person's thanking this director, Paul, for following up 7 times. He called her 7 times before she said yes, and she thanked him for it. So I say that because he had to care enough about that person. Casey had to care enough about the clients and his business. Paul had to care enough about that client. And then the way that this works is like, you care enough, then you do it consistently, then you see results. Now you care more. You don't think Paul's conviction on making more calls after that feedback wasn't better?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, yes. I mean, he's like, oh, so if I keep calling, I'm changing lives and I'm going to get thanked for it. It's a whole different lens on a role that people quite honestly don't enjoy that much, right? So again, you have to care enough to do what is really, I like it, but I would call it for a lot of people boring work. You just got to do the work. You got to put the reps in. Right?
That's definitely it, man. Just got to care enough to want to go help somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at Trent, who's in our system, and he's purchased 2 clubs in addition to the one he has, and he's developing a 3rd or a 4th right now. And when he would go into those new clubs, he would just make calls. And everybody was baffled. It's like, how is he taking a gym that's sitting at 100 or 115 members and just filling it up in 2 months? It's like, well, he just makes phone calls. And owners are like, yeah, but what else do you do? Like, there's got to be some tricky hook, or there's got to be a technique or an automation or some AI or something doing it. He's like, no, I'll just get on the phone and call everybody. As a matter of fact, he was in a race with Farkas for one of their clubs to get to 130 first. It was just sort of an internal competition that you created for fun. And he was literally calling people in its simplest format because he cared enough about his business and he wants to help people. And he would tell them, hey, I need to get you in here. I'm in a contest right now with this franchise I own, and I'm trying to win. And they were like, oh, cool. And same thing with the current client. So, well, let me refer some friends in here. Like, who cares, right? The thing is, are you, do you have enough self-confidence to say something like that? Like, help me out. I'm trying to fill this gym up. We just opened. I want to help as many people as I can. That's why I got into this business. Why aren't you referring me anyone? The master of that used to be Joe, who used to work here. Mm-hmm. He'd have people walk in with people and be like, all right, shut up. I brought you this person I've been telling you about, right? I brought him in person. Because he would say, what, you don't like me? You don't want me to eat? Like, come on, you don't like your friends? You don't want them to be in great shape?
Right.
But he wasn't bashful about it because he understood, he fully believed in what would happen when they came in there, right? Fully convicted. And so Trent just gets on the phone, calls people. Mm-hmm. Right? Is it fun? Is it exciting? No. He's like, I do it over my lunch break, like break in the middle of the day. I'll just call all the clients. So keep calling them till they either say, leave me alone, or I'll come in. No big deal. But he's also seen the other side of it, right? He's seen the results of filling up the gym with hardly any new leads, just based on all the leads they've already paid for, by the way, right? Just hitting those leads up. So again, he cares enough. He cares about his business, and the business does good. So this is what he's going to do to fill it up, right? you know that I did, speaking of boring work, I did that event with Alex Hermosi, right?
Yeah, I heard of it.
You heard of that guy? Well, he set out to break a world's record for book sales in 24 hours in the nonfiction category. And so the winner at the time, the lead was Prince Harry, and then it was Barack Obama, then Michelle Obama. And the Prince Harry was at 1.4 million books sold. So Alex is like, okay, I want to beat that in 24 hours. So he goes live on a Saturday and he pitches for probably 8 hours straight. And somewhere in that segment, he worked in like 5, and I'm air quoting VIP speakers. So it sounds silly to say that because I was one of them. And I got to sit down with him and have a conversation. But I also got to just observe the event and how many people were involved. There was 300 people in a call center behind the scenes. There was everyone on the team in the production of it, right? Mm-hmm. There was security there. I mean, there was so many people involved. They had set up 4 distribution centers around the country, fully stocked with these books, ready to roll. His pitch, Matt, was even the main pitch before the speakers came on was like 4 hours long. I asked his team, how many times did Alex role play this? And they said at least 70. Imagine, and it had been a year, so 12 months in the planning. He role played a live pitch in front of his team, filmed it, watched it, broke it down, filmed it, watched it, broke it down. He did that 70 times. How many hours is that of work, right? You talking, and all you see is the manifestation of that. You see a great, what looks like off the cuff, from the heart presentation, right? He breaks the record. He sells 3 million books, which more than doubles the record. He does $100 million in sales in 24 hours just because he's, again. But what went into that was an obscene amount of work, a year's worth of work and practice and grind and practice and work and practice. So you're talking about the boring work. Like, it's not about just doing the work. It's about caring enough to do the work. And in side conversations Alex and I would have leading up to the event, he was worried that if he didn't absolutely crush this event and make it look really good and have such a crazy value proposition that it would be stupid not to do it, that it would taint his brand. That was his biggest concern. Am I going to taint my brand if I don't offer an amazing value proposition? So here's a guy who I consider to be really intelligent, who's calling me on a weekend being like, do you think this is enough? Should I put more in there? You think people are going to like this? It's like, can you imagine? Like, if you saw him and you only know him from his online presence, can you imagine calling a friend and saying, are people going to like me? Is this going to be enough? Right? Nuts. Absolutely nuts. And so, but he cares enough about his brand and what it does for people, and he loves entrepreneurship, and that was what the whole book launch was about, and he could break a world record. So it's always an and, it's not an or, right? But he put in that boring work for a year to get to that point. 1 year of just grinding it out to see a 8-hour presentation, which broke a world record. So boring work, behind the scenes stuff, making your calls, following up with your emails, all the things, or your text messages, all the things that we're going to talk about in this series. You really just have to care enough, because boring work is boring work. Let's face it.
Care enough to get good at it, to be able to present it, to be confident in it, right? I mean, like, say you're new to Alloy, you got to get confident in the thing. It's all there, but you got to get to the thing, right? That's what Alex did. He had his stuff. Not like he didn't know it, but like he practiced. It was perfect.
Yeah.
He cared enough.
Yep. Right? That's it. But that doesn't sound pleasant. I don't think if you laid out the amount of work that he did, I don't think there's somebody else out there who would role play 70 times a 4-hour presentation, filmed, break it down, do it again.
Probably not.
Probably not. But that's why most people will probably not break a world's record for book sales.
Right.
So if you want to change lives and make an impact, you're going to have to do some boring work. As long as your why and your care is so compelling, you can outwork anyone in the best of ways. I mean, heaven forbid we change a bunch of lives and make some money in the process.
Heaven forbid. I mean, I cared enough to watch all 4 hours just to wait to see you come out there. So
I know. It was a little anticlimactic. I thought I was going to come out and do a cartwheel or something. It was like, and he was in like straight up present mode. So I said like a few words, which is very rare for me, and just let him just keep talking, which is probably a good idea in this situation. So, and listen, I pulled some stats to wrap up this particular segment from Bain, the consulting company, and they just did studies on consumer behavior. None of these things are shocking, but they are fun to hear these. 74% of consumers claim they're loyal to a business because they feel appreciated and understood rather than special offers.
Yeah.
So for all of you folks out there that are like, we need more digital leads, we need better hooks. What about a free month? What about a half this? What if I give this? What if I give that? I'm not saying those things aren't relevant, but that's not the most relevant thing, right? If you make people feel seen and appreciated and you understand them, that starts from the very first interaction until 10 years in your business, right? That's when you keep people. And there's true metrics to support it, which should not be surprising. Here's another one. 57% of consumers are willing to spend more on brands they feel loyal to. So if you pour into someone with enough care that they're then loyal to you on the back end, they're going to spend that $450, $500 a month, right? You shouldn't be scared of that. That's a very fair price for what we do. And for all the systems that we're going to go over, if we really put that much into people, they're going to spend that happily, right? But you got to put the effort in, because if it's a transactional relationship and it feels like a commodity, like a class-based thing on the back end, it's not going to work.
Nope.
There's no value proposition, right? So again, make them feel special. And then lastly, 77% of consumers remain loyal to their favorite brand for a decade or more. The reason that we have clients that have been at our original location for 30 years is because we treat them in a way that we're very loyal to them, and then they're very loyal to us. Again, it's the Ritz-Carlton, right? It's ladies and gentlemen servicing ladies and gentlemen, right? And that's the way that it should be. And again, these aren't surprising stats, but it's always nice to put some actual hard numbers to what seems like an esoteric, like, ooh, we're going to out-care everyone like we're at a campfire. We're not. But by God, we will. And we have systems to do it. And if we do it, we're going to win every time.
Damn right.
Ready to go part 2?
Part 2.
All right. We'll catch you guys on the flip side, part 2. Bye.